There's stuff flying in our airspace. We don't know what it is.
People are saying they're seeing UFOs.
It makes it increasingly less likely that we're alone.
Objects in the skies that we don't know exactly what they are.
We don't have good explanations for some of the things that we've seen.
Now, you know, there are a lot of people that are going to examine your facial expressions here, every twitch.
Maybe it has a very simple answer. Maybe it doesn't.
I think so.
Yeah.
All right. Whew. All right, y'all ready?
Yeah.
Ready.
Here we go. I'm Scott Rouse. I'm a body language expert and analyst, and I train law enforcement and the military in interrogation and body language. And I created the #1 online body language course with Greg Hartley, bodylanguagetactics.com. Mark?
Sing along to this one. I'm Mark Bowden. I'm an expert in human behavior and body language. I help people all over the world to stand out, win trust, gain credibility every time they communicate, including some leaders of the G7. Chase.
Hey, I'm Chase Hughes. Did 20 years in the U.S. military. #1 best-selling author in behavior profiling, influence, and persuasion. I train intelligence operatives and the general public in those things. Greg?
I'm Greg Hartley, former Army interrogator, interrogation instructor, resistance to interrogation instructor. I've written 10 books on body language and behavior and put together this #1 body language course, bodylanguagetactics.com with Scott. I spend most of my time on Wall Street and in corporate America.
All right. Well, today we're going to talk about a topic that's become very popular lately, and it's the UFO situation that's going on. It seems like they're everywhere. Every time the Navy goes out somewhere, it seems like they're surrounded by them, and nobody knows what they are. And there have been hundreds of reports, 6,000 reports this year of UFOs alone.
Last year.
Or of spotting. 6,000. Yeah, I guess last year. So that's what we're going to be talking about. So we're going to go over videos of different people in the government who are being asked questions about the UFOs and what they are and what they might be, and they give their thoughts on that. Now, as we go through this, keep in mind, we don't care either way, whether they're real or fake or whatever it is. We're just telling you what we see in the videos we're going to show you. That's it. We don't care. We don't care truth, lies, whatever. We're just going to tell you what we see and what our thoughts are on what we see. So anybody want to add anything?
The only thing I would add is remember there's a big report coming out this month that is supposed to be an unclassified report. We'll hear one of these guys talk about how long it takes to clear that up. But this is looking at government officials who know kind of what's in that report before we ever see it and know what we've heard.
Excellent. All right. You guys ready?
Yeah.
Oh, wait, before we start, please subscribe and hit the like button. That helps with our algorithm, and we want to get as many panelists as we possibly can. So if you subscribe, then you're a panelist. You're one of us. So come on in. The water's fine. All right, let's look at these UFOs things.
I have an interview the other day in which you said you've been briefed on unidentified flying objects. Are they real?
Well, I don't want to really get into it too much, but personally, I tend to doubt it. I mean, you have people that swear by it, right? And pilots have come in and they said, and these are pilots that are not pilots that are into that particular world, but we have had people saying that they've seen things. I'm not a believer, but, I guess anything's possible.
We spoke to...
All right, Greg, what do you got?
Let's start by talking about presidents in general. They have a product they're selling. They have a brand, and his brand is chairman. That's his brand and always will be. Each of these guys, I'll tell you what I call their brand. He stays to his brand. He does the typical Trump thing as he's illustrating and he's regulating. He puts his hands together, pushes you out, and then comes back. One interesting thing to note, pay attention to this emotional eye accessing cue. When people look down into their right, those are emotional eye accessing cues. As you think about your children, think about happy moments or sad moments, you'll find your eyes drifting down to your right. This president does this. I'm also going to tell you to pay really close attention throughout all these videos to who does and who doesn't. It's an interesting tell. And then I'll tell you what I think that means as we get closer to the end. At the minute he says, I talk to, you watch Trump back up and brace for what's coming. And I think he's navigating here, if you watch his eye movement and him choosing and editing words, to make sure he doesn't say anything bad about servicemen and women that he values. That's all I think we see here. Chase, what do you got?
Yeah, I think the video starts out with what, Greg, that you really helped all the panelists identify something called the surrender steeple, when the steeple has gone down a little bit. And that's pretty normal for him. And when he says, I'm not particularly a believer, or I don't particularly believe it, he has an invisible question mark there. And he does not hardly ever use this up talk where the tone of his voice goes up at the end. And one other thing I think is unusual here for this video is that when Trump wants you to believe something, he socializes the situation. He'll say other people are believing this, and then he'll build up the credibility of those other people, which we see here. And that's been the way that he operates since day negative 5,000 of his campaign. So he's been doing this a long time. I also think Tucker could have asked probably a more open-ended question here and might have got a little bit more data from there. Scott?
All right. I think another thing we see in common here with all, and that we're going to see in common with all these videos one of the threads that goes throughout these things is that these guys, when it comes to the presidents, and well, pretty much everybody, they've been told not to tell what they know. You know, if there is anything there. So they've all got their stock. They all cover the same stuff. They all cover how we don't know what it is. We don't know where it came from. They talk about movements, those types of things. And then they go on to talk about how it's possible it could be something from another planet or something like that. So we really don't see them nailed. Nobody says, nope, that's not it, or yep, that's it. Nobody gives a yes or a no, really. We just see that. And we know that Trump's being pretty honest about this, about giving the information he can give, because his tone goes low. His voice goes low and his tone goes low. He gets quiet. Then he starts delivering his answer. He gives strong eye contact there at the top, but he looks away from it to check his story. I believe that we'll find out as we go through here. These people have been given, here are the facts you can give. These 2 or 3 facts, that's it. But just add your thing to it. So they take that information and they put their, like Greg was saying, they put their information and they form their version of the story around those facts. That's why we're going to see varied stories and approaches and deliveries of the same information, but it sounds different and it looks a little different as we go through. So let's pay attention to that as well. But I think in this case, Trump is telling all he can tell us at this point. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, so there's some classic baseline Trump there, the point, the wipe, symmetrical, lots of stuff that we'd really expect from him. What we wouldn't normally expect is some of those vocal clicks that you get. Now, quite often I tell you a vocal click is meaning some stress. I think the stress here is about him not being able to take charge of this story. And if he were able to take charge of this story, then it would be, yeah, we've seen the biggest fleet of spaceships. We've had the largest amount of spaceships coming in. But really, he's not taking charge of this in that kind of way. So we kind of get this story of he doesn't really have anything to give us. Normally, he'd be exuberant, he'd be full of energy, full of hyperbole about it, and there's nothing of that usual nature. So that, to Scott's point, either means, he's been told, don't take this story anywhere, or he has nowhere to take it. There is just nothing there. I don't know which one it is at this point, but we're seeing some of the usual Trump and some of the unusual Trump as well. That's what I got for you on that one.
You gave an interview the other day in which you said you've been briefed on unidentified flying objects. Are they real?
Well, I don't want to really get into it too much, but personally, I tend to doubt it. You have people that swear by it, right? And pilots have come in and they said, and these are pilots that are not pilots that are into that particular world. But we have had people saying that they've seen things. I'm not a believer, but, I guess anything's possible.
We spoke to...
Let's move.
But what is true, and I'm actually being serious here, is that there's footage and records of objects in the skies that we don't know exactly what they are. We can't explain how they moved, their trajectory. They did not have an easily explainable pattern. And so, I think that people still take seriously trying to investigate and figure out what that is. But I have nothing to report to you today.
It's okay. Okay, Chase, what do you got?
I think it's interesting that in a lot of these presidents and government officials, when asked this question in particular, you see the same lateral boundary hand movement. And we're seeing that in people who it's a pretty uncharacteristic behavior for. And I thought that was pretty interesting. We saw the same thing here in Obama. And I think there's honest behavior for the duration. It's keeping within all of his baseline movements. And I think at the end, we're seeing his contemplation about the other information. Not that there's any deception going on, but I think you can see those lips tighten up. You know, he pulls his lips tight right at the end of the video. And I think he's withholding information. That's the definition of what lip compression suggests, denotes, or indicates, as Scott would say. I think that came from Joe Navarro. But that's literally withholding information. Greg?
Yeah, so when I watch him here, there are two or three things that stand off. Again, downright. Every one of these elected officials, I'm seeing downright. Now, is that emotion there because, hey, I want to tell you something I can't? Is it because, hey, there's something more than is here? Do I feel obligated to? Don't know. But I'm seeing that downright eye accessing in two presidents so far. Let's keep a watch and see what we see. He uses a push-pull word. Anytime somebody says actually being serious, actually. Now, I know he's just been joking, so that's part of it. But I want to ask, well, were you serious here or were you serious there? For you, if a person says actually, you should pay attention to that word because that's not a usual word a person has in their vocabulary. To use it all the time, it means nothing. He's navigating what to say, and in classic Obama style. That's what he does when he's not on prompter, is he negotiates through as he's talking. And his strategy is what I call the entertainer. He's the guy who's going to keep you entertained. He's going to engage you. He's not going to flirt like Bill Clinton, you'll see in a minute, but he's going to engage you. And he's doing the entertainer. He does that lip grip, same thing we saw. A little bit of muscle engagement here. He goes to barrier and adapt a little bit. And then there's a pronoun shift. There's an interesting shift when he says, we, and he thinks, oh, wrong words, people still take this seriously. Interesting. So something's going on in his head. Doesn't mean anything magical. It just means we can see something going on. We don't know what. So let's dig in. Scott, what do you got?
All right. Of course, we want to know what he knows and if he knows anything. And I think he knows whatever there is. I think he knows it because we're seeing him be honest, and he's being honest with his answer. And we're seeing him again, just like in Trump, we're seeing him thinking about a second and then delivering. So when he's using the classic Obama illustrators here, he's using that upside down fist with that thumb out a little bit and illustrating this way with specific parts there toward the end. And as he's doing this, he's being, again, the classic Obama. It sounds like I'm thinking as I'm going forward, but he is going back over. He's got those 3 or 4 facts that he can give, and he's arranging them and delivering them as he goes along. I'm sure he had the question before this knew it was going to come up, and he has in general what he's going to say. And the reason we know that is that he doesn't know exactly what he's going to say is because those illustrators land a little bit later than the words land as he's speaking. So the word will hit, then the illustrator, the word will hit, then the illustrator. They're not on point like that. They're on point like that. That's a little too much, but a little less than that. But that's how we know that he's thinking and structuring things as he goes along and rethinking as it happens. Happens very quickly. You do it too. So I think what he's doing, I think he's being honest here, and he's telling us all he can tell us. And I think out of all of them that we're going to see, this is the guy I would believe the most as we go through this because he looks so honest in his delivery. All the bells and whistles for me, there are no bells and whistles. It just says, hey, this is all truthful here. And that's all he can tell us, I think, at this point. All right, Mark, what do you got?
Yep, so symmetrical, again, like Trump, that's usual for him, so that's good. He's on form there. We will see him later on. If we look at a video of later on, he will go asymmetrical, and that could be interesting for us. The thing I want to pay attention to is the downward inflection that he has. It's a little more depressed. It's what I would call a little bit disappointed. I think, again, like Trump, he's disappointed that he can't really take control of this message. Wouldn't it be great for both of them if they could go, hey, I'm going to tell you all that I've got right now. Or they could go, hey, I'm going to tell you don't worry, there is nothing out there. Or they could, as a president or a past president, take charge of this situation. Wouldn't this be a moment of history? Well, not for either of those two. Because they don't get to do that. Because either they've been told, just hold the information back, or there's simply nothing to deliver. And both could be massively disappointing for them. Not only on a level of, hey, I'm president, I wish I could give across this information, but maybe there's even some personal disappointment there of going, hey, I wish there was some like proper aliens about, but it appears there isn't, or I just can't tell you. I don't know what it is, but certainly there's a little bit of disappointment there from him. That's what I got for you.
But what is true, and I'm actually being serious here, is that there's footage and records of objects in the skies that we don't know exactly what they are. We can't explain how they moved, their trajectory. They did not have an easily explainable pattern. And so, I think that people still take seriously trying to investigate and figure out what that is. But I have nothing to report to you today.
It's okay.
You've got it.
For sure, but it is an unidentified flying object or something like that. Now, now that this has been verified by the Pentagon, would you be surprised if we were visited by creatures from another planet?
Yeah.
You would be surprised.
Wouldn't you be?
Well, yeah.
Hell yeah.
But I haven't seen anything, and I think it's interesting that you said you'd be surprised, because if you've seen evidence, so you're saying there is no evidence. President Clinton told me that if he had seen evidence, he would tell everyone that he'd seen it. Do you feel the same way?
No.
No, you wouldn't. You don't think we can handle it?
No, I'm afraid it might spin you into orbit.
Okay.
All right, Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, well, all of them so far great entertainers. I mean, isn't that an interesting kind of pattern to see what entertainment value all of these past presidents can deliver? Tells us something. Now, this one is a little bit different, though, I think, because in this one, the president here is shown a very specific image. And of course, we are pattern detection machines. We're looking to classify things by the patterns that we see. And so I think in this one, we see somebody who is just that little bit more tight-lipped. As Chase was saying, we see way more lip pursing. We see way more avoidance in the language and the story he starts to tell, and a clear redirect of yeah, wouldn't you be? So a complete deflection back onto the interviewer. I think that's because there is a very specific image that is seen there, and the possibility of an image that he understands exactly what that is, or can classify it in a much closer way, and isn't going to deliver either his opinion or some kind of knowledge on exactly how he and the government would classify that particular image. So very different. I wonder what we'd get from those other two if, again, that image was shown. That's what I'd like to do. Like to get the same image and go, take a look at that. Tell me about that particular image. Chase, what do you got?
Yep, agree with both of you guys. I think as Kimmel is completing the question, we see an unusual or uncharacteristic for Bush TDS, or transderivational search, where we see the eyes very quickly go in this round counterclockwise motion as he's contemplating. I think there's some serious management going on. There's definitely managing his facial expression as the question is finishing up. Before he answers, you can see all this. And there's exaggerated facial movement for him that is not in keeping with his normal. And it's I think the laughter he says when he says, hell yeah, or right before that little laughter, I think that's forced. And I think that is a forced mechanism in order to relate and to look comfortable and collected. He has a sour pucker, like Mark always does, the lemon face. There it is. Right when Clinton is brought up. And I think that's interesting. And there's a low latency response to disagree with Clinton about aliens. And low latency is just the time between I ask a question and the person starts their answer. So it's very quick. And it's very quick compared to how he responded to the alien question. And I think, of course, he's obviously aware of tons of classified information. So this is a normal thing that presidents get briefed on. Of course, they're getting briefed by the DNI, the Director of National Intelligence, on a very regular basis. So I think this is pretty interesting that we're seeing these behaviors here for somebody with that level of clearance. Greg?
Yeah, so when I watch him, the first thing I wrote was hedged, of course, the same thing we're seeing in the other guys. He's not going to leak information. They didn't ask him a question. So the downright eye accessing only happens for a split second, but does happen. And then his head kind of tilts as he's doing a thing. Now, he's one of my favorite strategists in terms of how he portrays himself. I used to call it that there's nothing to see here. In the South, there's a thing people call country dumb. And that means you're not dumb and you pretend to be dumb. And, you know, lots of people think Bush was dumb. But he's pretty smart at making people leave him alone by chaffing and redirecting like, and then, hell yeah. And that's a redirect for you to go off down a path while he's playing a game. If you watch, he adapts a little bit. He bounces in his chair and his blink rate goes up just a little at that picture. If you'd shown, I agree, Mark, if we'd shown the picture to other people, we'd get a different thing. And then his, yeah, of course I would be surprised, wouldn't you? That redirect is beautiful, gives him a chance to turn away from this whole topic and walk down a different path. I think it's a great example of either whether you call it a country boy or nothing to see here, he's doing it. And then that wrenched up face thing he does when he was president, he did it all the time. Not the same one exactly, but he would go, well, like he's confused, you know. Confusion. And it really wasn't confusion at all. It was just his gimmick to push you aside. You can see he's doing exactly what the other guys are doing. I would like to be in control. Since I can, I'll do something different. Boom. That's it. Scott.
Cool. Yeah, I think what we're seeing here is different than what we've seen up to this point, because the route he's taken is, and we'll see this route taken as well. This is one of the several they have to choose from. He's taken the funny route, where he goes down and makes sure he laughs about it, because he doesn't have to get serious at that point. And anything he says, we can laugh it off as UFOs, that type of thing, right? So he does that, I think, because we're comfortable with that. We're comfortable seeing him do that, because he did it several times when he was in office, as you all know from baselining him when he was in. So that's common for him, and we're familiar with it, so we become comfortable with that automatically. I think what we're seeing in the lip pursing there, and is not the sour thing. I think we're looking at lip pursing a little bit, but it's not the one where he disagrees or anything. He's focusing on what's happening, because he's running what these possibilities in his mind. He's a really smart guy, believe it or not. He's really, really smart. So I think he's running scenarios about what might happen with the next question. And the only time he sits really still is after he asks, when he starts telling about what Bill Clinton said. Then he almost close to freezing at that point. And that's where he's got that focus going on in his mouth. I mean, you've seen people when they're trying to get something, you know, like a thread through a needle or something like that, trying to play a game and trying to get close on it. That's what it is. People at the shooting range, you'll see him do that often as well. I think that's what that is, in my opinion. It's what it is. It's a focusing thing. So I think he's for a second there, I think he's worried about what Clinton said. That's why he pays such hard attention to it. Maybe they don't get along. Maybe it looks like they get along. I don't know. If I had $1 to put on it, I would say maybe they didn't. Maybe they butted heads over some stuff and didn't quite get along very well. So that would be my opinion on that. Is that all of us?
Yeah, that's it.
All right.
For sure, but it is an unidentified flying object or something like that. Now that this has been verified by the Pentagon, would you be surprised if we were visited by creatures from another planet?
Yeah.
You would be surprised.
Wouldn't you be?
Well,
Hell yeah.
But I haven't seen anything, and I think it's interesting that you said you'd be surprised, because if you've seen evidence, so you're saying there is no evidence. President Clinton told me that if he had seen evidence, he would tell everyone that he'd seen it. Do you feel the same way?
No.
No, you wouldn't. You don't think we can handle it?
No, I'm afraid it might spin you into orbit.
Okay.
Let's move.
It makes it increasingly less likely that we're alone.
Oh, you're trying to give me a hint that there are aliens.
No, I'm trying to tell you I don't know.
Oh.
But if we were visited someday, I wouldn't be surprised.
All right. Greg, what do you got?
So when he starts off, he's classic Clinton, and I call him the flirt. And I don't mean that to be sexually flirtatious, but like a child is flirtatious. If you have a child sitting in the front row of seats in an airplane and you're 5 seats back, they can close space with you instantly, simply with their face. And we all have that ability, but we turn it off. Bill Clinton never turned it off. He makes contact from across the room. He draws you in with his eyes. And you can see what he's doing to him here. It's constant. Chase, you talk a lot about him looking away. That looking away is a drawing thing. He's pulling his eyes and pulling you to him. He's closing space beautifully with this. And it allows him to get away with a lot of things other people wouldn't. So he strings out his words. Yeah, he's from Arkansas, but he's stringing those words out a lot further than he usually does when he hits key points here. And he, if you notice, now he breaks eye contact away, but he breaks eye contact again down to the right. Is this one of those cases where, hey, I want to take control and tell you something really cool that I learned because I really do care about it and I really want everybody to know, but I really can't? One of the things you're going to learn as we go through this is when we get to these intelligence guys, they have a different mindset entirely because methods and means are dangerous. If we divulge what we know, we have to also divulge how we found it out. And that's why all this is so complex and how you take all this intelligence report and turn it back into something that is simple. So all these presidents' hands are tied in what they tell you because they may stumble into something accidental. They may not have anything cool and sexy, but by telling you that it's not cool and sexy, they're telling you how they found out. So that's part of the problem here. So you can see it. He does it downright, and then he looks back and draws him back into the story. All that. That's it. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, so love that because it opens up this idea of that childlike nature. And he opens with this idea of we are not alone, which is a classic trope, a classic idea within ufology and the alien world. And we'll come to this as we go along. This idea of we're not isolated, we're not alone, we may well be looked after in some way. And so that child is always looking for a parent, a protector, something that might have more power than it. Again, we'll come to all of these things in a moment, this idea of the parent figure and why in behavior we as human beings may well look to the skies and try and find new parents for ourselves and protectors for ourselves. But here's what I see here. He has what I would call quite congruent baton gestures with his head on. He doesn't know. I don't know. And so from him, I'm a little more assured that he doesn't really know anything, that maybe there just isn't really any good amount of data out there to say one thing or the other. He, for me, seemed really assured of he doesn't know. He just doesn't know. But Chase, what do you think? What do you got on this?
I agree with you guys completely. I think it's interesting. I think he wants to believe it as much as I do. And we see this shoulder shrug when he says the words, "we're alone." And this single-sided shoulder shrug, and if you see this in one of your friends, is typically suggests that a person lacks confidence in what they're saying. And I think that's pretty interesting that happens right there. And I think it's also interesting that there's a confirming nod as Kimmel says, "Oh, so you're giving me a hint." And we see this big nod before the denial. And it wasn't like no, but the nod happened at a separate time than the denial. I thought that was interesting. And Clinton eyeing the floor and speaking is normal. And a lot of his charisma, I think, Greg, like you were saying, is directly attributable to this behavior because he looks away as he's contemplating and he returns eye contact at precise and powerful moments. So it's not eye contact the whole time. So now he doesn't need to make a face to make a point. He's just returning the eye contact. And that's one of his keys of charisma, I think. Scott?
All right. Yeah, I agree with everything you guys are saying. And he sort of starts off with the one people end with. He talks about how he hopes there may be other life out there. He talks about how if we were visited, he wouldn't be surprised. He sort of opens up with that part of it. Yes, you all have covered most everything. But he wraps it up, you're right, in classic Clinton fashion. And he kind of gives it the hint that he knows something a little bit more than he may know, which is, you sort of get that from all of them, which, of course, does he or not? Going back to Mark's thing, maybe not. And I think what that nod is, I don't think it's a confirmation nod of that. I think it's a confirmation nod of, I know what's coming. I know the answer to this next one, or it's almost a finish to that one at the beginning of the next one. I think he's heard this so many times and been asked so many times when it was in a funny situation or a weird situation. That's what that nod is about. I could be completely wrong, but that's what it looks like to me. But I just thought it was interesting. He opened up with the there may be something else out there at that point.
It makes it increasingly less likely that we're alone.
Oh, you're trying to give me a hint that there are aliens.
No, I'm trying to tell you I don't know.
Oh.
But if we were visited someday, I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay, perfect.
So next month, a government report is expected to be made public on the sightings of UFOs. As the former director of national intelligence, I think there have been a lot of theories about UFOs. What do you make of these revelations? What might this be? Have you seen any yourself? What do you make of this?
Well, first, I think it is kind of, there is logic to the intelligence community addressing this, since the intelligence community has a lot of practice of dealing with ambiguity and less than complete facts. And secondly, I think it's really important that whenever we witness such phenomenon, that it is recorded and documented for the future. When we may gather more information and have a better understanding of what's transpiring. Could there be life out there? Sure. As huge as the universe is, we really can't reject that possibility. So I think this is a good thing. The transparency, I expect this report will be filled with ambiguity as well. And people, depending on their leanings, will extract what they want out of this report.
All righty. I'll go first on this one. He said similar things about 1,000 different subjects and said almost the same thing in he has a structure to his answers. And that's what he's done here, because he doesn't answer the question. If you'll listen throughout, he doesn't answer the question. He gives the same information everybody else has been given. That block of information and just wording it in his fashion. And then he says, I don't think he, there's something up here. There's an issue here, because after he says the intelligence community has a lot of practice in dealing with ambiguity and less than complete facts, we see a crimping of that right part of his mouth goes up. And most of the time that indicates that the smugness or contempt or disdain, something or dislike. So there's something in there he doesn't like about that. Maybe having to answer the question again, maybe with the answer he's giving or that he has to give, instead of just saying, look, there's nothing there. Or like Mark said, yeah, there could be, they're here, something like that. So something in there is bothering him about that. And overall, he's not answering the question. It's a lot of just that boring ramble. And we've seen him do this a lot when he's been in hearings he's done before. And so he's really good at that. Greg, what do you got?
I love my people. This is a guy with many, many years leading SIGINT, Signals Intelligence. Then he moved to DIA for many years. Then he was a private satellite company guy. Then he was an intelligence guy. This is not an elected official. This is a guy who's like, yeah, whatever. I'm going to answer the question you allow me to answer. And Chase, sound familiar? Give me the wrong question, I'll give you the wrong answer. That's the way this works. So he's walking down the path. He's giving you the answer to whatever you're going to allow him to answer. He does look down and to his right, but it's not an emotional accessing cue. He's looking at something because you see him look at it twice. He's got some note there, probably like I have right here, and he looks down. But there's no real emotional anchor like these other guys you're seeing, these elected officials. This is a guy who spent his entire life in the intelligence business, had a short stint in the Marines, and then after that he's been in the intelligence business. He does do a couple of interesting things. When he says secondly, go back and watch. When he says secondly, you get a brow furrow about what the report's going to include. And then he says, this will be, and he does one shoulder shrug. He doesn't have any idea what's going to be in the report either. He's been out of the office too long. He doesn't know what they're going to put because of the stuff that's just come up. And then he says, I don't think there's going to be any insight, and this thing's going to say as usual is what he's actually saying to you. He didn't show any emotion because this is a seasoned intelligence professional. Watch. You'll see Panetta come later. Panetta was an elected official who became an intelligence official. People who spend their careers in intelligence have a different mindset because they don't feel obliged to tell you anything. While an elected official feels like they're letting you down, we all know working behind the screens that if we tell you the wrong thing, we're going to do a lot more damage than telling you nothing. So we don't comment on rumors for a reason. That's it. That's all I got. Chase, what do you got?
Yeah, and Greg, he's your people. He started off in Army intelligence, and a lot of people don't know that there's many intelligence agencies in this country, a whole lot more than you can count. And he was also, he was the DNI, the Director of National Intelligence. Yep. It's the highest place in the land. The power of this position is like the director of the CIA reports to him. And, we've got there's top secret is not the highest security clearance. Like, I think the highest you could probably go is called Yankee White. And that's like the nuclear launch codes. That's what that security clearance is called. So this guy has access to pretty much everything. But he was also chairman or in charge of the director of the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. It actually does exist. And that probably would be the agency to ask, if we were dealing with anything like that. And the video that we're seeing here, I've seen a lot of people on other comments on this thing where it's switching between white and black. The camera that's being used is infrared. It's called a FLIR, a forward-looking infrared camera. The thing that you hold on to is, we call it in the military, a potato, because it's kind of shaped like a potato. And we're switching between either white is hot or black is hot. So that's what's going on in that video there. I think it's interesting that he wants to know if there's life out there. He looks kind of interested in that. He gets the most animated when he starts speaking about that. And I enjoyed his candor about the reports being jammed full of ambiguity. And I'll just leave it at that. Mark?
Yeah, I think, Chase, I think Yankee White is actually a color by the Farrow and Ball Paint Company. Should you want to be redecorating your home, Yankee White would be a beautiful addition to it.
Would I have to say, walls. Would I have to pronounce it Callure?
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Now, I think, now we've dealt with the art and craft of Chase's new home. I think what's interesting here is we get an eyebrow raise, I think, at the start of some openness. I think he's quite open to having a go at some of this. And it may be, as Chase, as you say, some openness to the idea. But then we're just deep in bureaucracy here. And from my point of view, yeah, we've got somebody very high in the intelligence services and agencies here. But in my experience, that means you just got a better level of bureaucrat right in front of you. And so what all we've got is like less than complete facts. It's like, I'm going to really take apart these facts and look for ones that are less than complete. The idea of transparency creating high levels of ambiguity. It's like, oh, great. Like, the more information I give you, the less you'll understand around this. So we're deep in a Kafkaesque bureaucracy here, whereby the more you get, the less you will ever know about this. Yeah, I think we're getting shoulder shrugs on the possibilities here. So maybe he doesn't know where this report is going to go. What I dislike most about this is there's some very clear images that go up there, and the interviewer doesn't say, so what's that? Like, tell me about that. All that happens is that phenomenon is already categorized in the area of UFO, and then questions are asked about unidentified flying objects. Then, rather than going, what would you class that phenomenon that I see in front of me right now? That's the kind of question that I'd be asking. But who knows the kind of answer that you get out of a top-level bureaucrat like this? They might wind you up in so much, triple-signed paperwork that you never get anything out of them. That's what I got on that one.
He would go to default answer number one. It's either aliens, or it's not.
It's not.
Right, exactly. It's possibly that or possibly not.
So next month, a government report is expected to be made public on the sightings of UFOs. As the former director of national intelligence, I think there have been a lot of theories about UFOs. What do you make of these revelations? What might this be? Have you seen any yourself? What do you make of this?
Well, first, I think it is kind of, there is logic to the intelligence community addressing this, since the intelligence community has a lot of practice of dealing with ambiguity and less than complete facts. And secondly, I think it's really important that whenever we witness such phenomenon, that it is recorded and documented for the future. When we may gather more information and have a better understanding of what's transpiring. Could there be life out there? Sure. As huge as the universe is, you really can't reject that possibility. So I think this is a good thing. The transparency, I expect this report will be filled with ambiguity as well. And people, depending on their leanings, will extract what they want out of this report.
All right.
So at the end of all that sifting and interpreting, what do you think is the most likely hypothesis?
I don't know. When people talk about it, is there other life besides what's in the States, in the world, the globe? Life is defined in many different ways. I think it's a bit presumptuous, if not arrogant, for us to believe that there's no other form of life anywhere in the entire universe. What that might, be is, I think, subject to, a lot of different views. But I think some of the phenomena we're going to be seeing continues to be unexplained. And might in fact be some type of phenomenon that is the result of something that we don't yet understand, and that could involve some type of activity that some might say constitutes a different form of life.
Wow. All right, Greg, what do you got?
Again, I love intelligence people. You could ask Siri to give you some kind of a declaration on UFOs, and it would be probably this good. AI could write what he just said. And what he's doing is pontificating and rolling around in his head. And he's broke eye contact. He's eye blocking, so he doesn't have to deal with it. This is also over Zoom or one of those, so it's recent and it's interesting. But when he gets to a point where he's starting to say anything with any substance, he touches his brow and then he reroutes. So he's just running around and saying, it's possible it's a new life form. I love words like, some might say it constitutes. When he's saying that, he's balled up, he's guarded. He doesn't do any downright eye accessing. He does, occasionally he'll look over to the right and it looks like he's looking down, but his head is down, so he's looking up as he's thinking about, hey, how do I approach this? I don't see anything here that's divulging anything. I think he probably knows a hell of a lot more than he's letting on. This is a guy whose entire career was in the CIA and then became director of national intelligence. And as Chase said, all the spies, all the spy catchers, all the assets that we have, everybody reports up to this guy. So this guy knows a lot of stuff. If anybody knows anything, it's him. And he also knows how important it is to guard those methods and means and all that kind of stuff. What you're going to hear from these guys, so when you think about a UFO, I'm going to give you a quick note. When you think about a UFO and you think, hey, how do we find out this is a UFO? First thing they're going to do is they're going to hop on the phone and say, hey, DARPA, do you have anything weird going on over in this grid coordinate? And DARPA is these guys who are building robots and all this kind of stuff. We're going to ask ONI, hey, you guys got anything weird going on out here? All this top super secret stuff. And we can't talk about that. They're not going to put that in the report. Hey, we checked by this. And then they're going to check radar signatures, and they're going to check materials, and they're going to check materials command. There's a ton of stuff these guys are going to do that they can't divulge. If they do, they're telling you how we collect intelligence, how we validate threat, all of that stuff. And the last thing we want, any of us want, is that. We don't want that divulged. That'll be all over foreign intelligence before you know it. So this guy's protecting, and he's doing what he does best. And Mark, you said it earlier, and I think this is it. In proper analyst fashion, he goes to what he knows. He just balls up and turns away. And it's a beautiful thing. So Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, so I spent a long part of my career helping analysts just like this talk to the public or talk to elected politicians, and he just screamed. I don't know who the guy was, but immediately I said, this guy just screams analyst. I've seen this guy time and time again. What's happening there is he takes the longest route possible to get to the idea of, I don't know. I have no idea. That's, he circumnavigates everything, and he disguises that route in these tropes of deep thought and introspection. So we kind of look at him and go, wow, he's really big into this, and that this is really tricky stuff that he's grappling with here. And he takes the idea out to the idea of, life itself and back in again, and wanders around it simply to go, look, the reality is just don't know. Just don't know. Now, does he know or does he not know? What does he know? Again, he's going to be professional enough to be able to not give it, to use this trope of introspection and thought and analysis to not deliver anything that might, tell us too much, as Greg says, about how this information is got, because that might be actually more powerful than knowing what something is. Just being able to gather the information is maybe more powerful than what something is or what it may not be. There. Chase, what do you got?
Yeah, agree with you guys completely. One thing I think is interesting in here is how he shows extreme frustration on his face when he's talking about, I think it would be arrogant and presumptuous for us to do these things. He's very emotive about those things in particular. But I would like all four of us to chip in some money and get him a trophy for the most convoluted answer in recorded history. So I think we could do that. We could put that together. But I think what we're seeing here, this shows the raw power of social repercussions on having a stigma around you if you answer a question a certain way. So this shows how powerful it is of like, I'm going to wind up on Twitter if I say the wrong thing. So I'm okay putting my head down. I would rather be the head put down guy than there's an alien in a jar guy. And I'll leave it at that. Scott?
All right. Yeah, I agree. This guy either has a gargantuan piece of information he can't give away and just know what to start to not flip out, but it's really stressing him, or he's just going right down the route everybody else is going. He does pretty much say the same thing everybody else does. However, his behavior is different from everything we've seen or will see. I've seen this behavior before, and Greg and Chase, when I tell you where it is, you'll go, oh yeah, that's where I've seen it before. When somebody's getting ready to tell you something they've done and it's not good, that stress building up as they start telling it, that's what you see when somebody's telling you something they've done that's bad. That's the part that bothers me about this. He's pushing on his head. He's not looking up. His head is completely looking down his lap. That's the behavior you see when somebody knows they've done something wrong and they're tortured by it and they're telling you what happened. They know that they don't want to and they wish it never happened, but they're telling you about it. If you want to see what it looks like when that happens, go watch that again.
But he's been in front of Congress and he doesn't do that. I mean, that's the interesting piece. I think this is for lack of a better term, I think it's a bit of a resistance technique. And he further says some interesting things. He's the only one in this whole show for me that made me think, because they start talking about, so could it be supernatural? And he says, I choose to be an agnostic because I have no idea about supernatural things. And he kind of answers that question. So it's kind of an interesting twist. It makes me wonder what is going on in his head. All we can see is there's a deviation, there's something odd. I don't know that I think he may just be doing what he does and knowing what he knows how to do and twisting and turning. And going back to something he did early, Mark, 25 years in the CIA, he worked from being an analyst up to wherever he got, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, that behavior bothered me because I know when I've seen it, that person's been inside they're a wreck. They're a mess as they're trying to get that out. What are you going to say?
Yeah, go back and watch him, and then go watch the rest of this interview, guys, because this is a good interview. There's a lot more to it. This is a very long interview, and you can get some baseline out of him, what's normal for him, and they only narrow down on this UFO thing for a few questions and then back out.
Yeah.
So it'd be a good one.
And his behavior isn't this going in or out. So anyway, so that's what I'm seeing there. Okay, we good?
So at the end of all that sifting and interpreting, what do you think is the most likely hypothesis?
I don't know. You know, when people talk about it, you know, is there life, other life besides what's in the States, in the world, the globe? You know, life is defined in many different ways. I think it's a bit presumptuous, if not arrogant, for us to believe that there's no other form of life anywhere in the entire universe. What that might, you know, be is, I think, you know, subject to, you know, a lot of different views. But I think some of the phenomena we might be seeing continues to be unexplained, and might in fact be some type of phenomenon that is the result of something that we don't yet understand, and that could involve some type of activity that some might say constitutes a different form of life.
Okay.
Let's move.
Anything's possible.
We spoke to a government official recently who said the U.S. government had wreckage from a UFO in a facility on an Air Force base. Are you familiar with that?
I haven't heard that, no. I haven't heard that. It has not been within government, has not been a big thing, but I've seen it. I've seen it on your show, but I've seen it. I don't assume it's correct, but, you know, I have an open mind, Tucker.
No, you do, Mr. President. Thank you for that.
Nowadays, you can believe anything, right?
True.
All right, Chase, what do you got?
I think Trump starts this recognition nod, or maybe a confirmation nod, before Tucker's even done asking the question, which I think is just true to him. Like, he doesn't see himself as somebody who needs to be managed or needs to really manage his behavior at all. So I think his filter is turned way down compared to everybody else. And I think, you know, I think he gave something away. I think he gave, maybe not that there's some flying saucer in a basement somewhere, but maybe that he knows something about what Tucker's asking about. But I want you to pay attention to the sensory shifting that goes on here. And he says, I haven't heard that. I haven't heard that. And then he says, I've seen that, and I've seen that, in three different scenarios there. And it's not a big thing within government. There's a double shrug, and he says, I've seen it. And then he says, I think he's self-managing after he says, I've seen it. And then he says, oh, crap, I can't say that I've actually seen it. And then he says, I've seen it on your show. So he doubles down with the I've seen it, but he changes the meaning or the context of where he's seen it. So I think, saw it, and I think he revealed something there and had to correct the record instantaneously that he saw it on Tucker. Mark?
Yeah, so there's some problems with the questioning here, especially around this idea of wreckage, because as you're right there, Chase, we get this very quick affirmation going as the wreckage is talked about, and it could look like agreement, but I think what he's doing is just being agreeable. It's his way to control this is just to be agreeable, because we don't see any kind of slow blink of acceptance of what's being said. Now, does that mean there is no wreckage? Well, there may be no wreckage of a.
Oh, you've been silenced.
It would just be like stuff. Did I disappear?
You froze for a second. Yeah, you froze for a second. It was awesome. Yeah, no, keep going.
Okay. So I froze somewhere. You make up your best idea of what happened in that freeze and put it down below. What exactly?
They're shutting you down, Mark. It's the government.
Aliens.
Said,
Where was
yeah. So what is the wreckage? Well, it wouldn't be an unidentified wreckage if it's seen as wreckage. It would just be like metal on the ground of an unknown sort. It wouldn't be from an unidentified flying object. Again, the questions aren't specific enough that we can really test, is somebody telling the truth about something or not, because it's so easy to get around the question, because the questions aren't categorical enough, I would say. But we get double shoulder shrugs there again, which kind of feels to me like he doesn't quite know. So he may know about some stuff, but the questions aren't being specific enough, I would say. Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, so when I watch this, I see internal conversation, and I agree with both of you. There is a big nod up front. I think that big nod is okay, what you got, leaning in, and then he pulls him back. And Chase, you're right, all the alpha behavior that's all over him as he leans forward, gets the question, then he comes back. He does a little internal conversation when he makes that mistake and says, I saw, and then realizes people are going to jump to conclusions and use it. Then he shifts gears. Again, he goes down and to his right, and he starts thinking about what to say, comes back and delivers an answer. I think a couple of things to note. There's an NSA document where national security, they're concerned that analysts don't have a place in their head for aliens, don't have a place in their head for this stuff. And that's part of the problem, Mark. What question do you ask about a UFO? I mean, when you're working in the intelligence business, we have briefs on how to ask questions about stealth technology, for example, all that kind of stuff. Well, you'd have to have something about UFOs, and you have to know something about UFOs to know what to ask. Because if you say, was it a UFO? Yeah, we don't know what it was. So, of course, it was UFO.
Yeah.
And then you're on Friday night on the History Channel being quoted as saying, you got aliens in a bottle again. So you got to be careful what you say, and I think he's aware of that. But he's still very much Trump here, and he's still got his hands down doing the thing that he does, and he's still in his posture, not shaking at all. Scott, what do you got?
Yeah, I think we're seeing him give an honest answer here. I think we're seeing him give the classic Trump sincerity when he's sincere, because his tone goes down again. And a lot of people, a lot of them will start doing this. That volume goes down, the tone gets strong, but it's low. And as they deliver the answer, he covers the same bases the same way most everyone else has up to this point. Starts off with, gives a little fact about, I don't know what that is, but it always ends up with, well, it could be something else. Who knows what it could be? They all end up there. It goes back to why I think the information they're given is a block of information, not specifically, but they add it to their tools to bring that information out. That's what I think. That's what I think is happening. And after ever how many shows we've done about him and the years we had to observe his baseline, I think we're seeing him go right down that baseline of being sincere with his answer. That's what it looks like. The two quick shoulder shrugs and then the one shoulder shrug. I think that just he isn't sure about that. The wreckage, is there a wreckage or not? He doesn't know. I don't think he paid much attention to it, because I got the feeling he didn't believe in that anyway. Not just because he said that, but by the way he acted as he was saying it. He ends with, I don't assume it's correct, but I have an open mind. Again, going to, well, yeah, it's still possible. They've all done that. Every one of them have done that, gone right down. However, Clinton opened up with that and went backwards down the road. But everybody else has gone along that same road, and I think we're going to still see that as we go through the rest of these videos. All right. We good?
Yep.
Anything's possible.
We spoke to a government official recently who said the U.S. government had wreckage from a UFO in a facility on an Air Force base. Are you familiar with that?
I haven't heard that, no. I haven't heard that. It has not been within government, has not been a big thing, but I've seen it. I've seen it on your show, but I've seen it. I don't assume it's correct, but, I have an open mind, Tucker.
No, you do, Mr. President. Thank you for that.
Nowadays, you can believe anything, right?
True.
Yeah.
I would immediately race to wherever they have the files about Area 51 and the UFOs, and I go through everything to find out what happened.
Right.
Did you do that?
That's why you will not be president. Because that's the first thing that you would do. The aliens won't let it happen. You reveal all their secrets. They exercise strict control over us.
Now, there are a lot of people that are going to examine your facial expressions here, every twitch, everything, and say, and of course, so did you look? Did you see? Did you explore?
I can't reveal anything.
Oh, really? Because President Clinton said he did go right in, and he did check, and there was nothing.
Well, that's what we're instructed to say.
Okay. Greg, what do you got?
Not a lot. This is the entertainer again, and he's smart enough to be able to just push him off with comedy, with levity, with all that. And you see him. The only thing is, again, when he gets to some actual content, he's back down to his right again, as he says, well, that's what we're supposed to say. He's got a great routine worked out here. He ties the aliens back in. The funny thing is, Kimmel, that's Kimmel, right? Does a good quid pro quo. Well, Clinton told me this. So now he's trying to use an elicitation technique to get him to respond. He's like, yeah, that's what they told us to say. Is that all rehearsed? Probably. But there's no body language really to leak here. I think it's the entertainer, and he's doing what he does best. Chase, what do you got?
Yeah, we see Obama doing the classic. Anytime he does something good, and he's a wonderful entertainer, super entertaining guy, very cool from a personality perspective and conversations, much like Bush. Really cool to talk to, really cool to watch. And we see his bottom lip kind of go into his mouth every time he says something that he's a little bit proud of, or that he particularly enjoys. And I think this, he's comfortable the whole time. But when Kimmel asked, did you look? Did you do that? He starts to get serious, like, I can't talk about it. I can't talk about anything in there. And his lips tighten up, so there's some withheld opinions or withheld information there. And I think Kimmel, as an example, is a master at elicitation. Greg, we were just talking about that. And there's something they teach in intelligence school, in like the Jason Bourne schools and intelligence agencies and in the military intelligence, is the more sensitive the information you need, the less questions you should be asking. So you should shift that to statements instead of questions. That's a whole nother topic. But Mark, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah. Again, my notes here, just Obama, classic entertainer. He's using some of the structures of improvisation, reincorporation. He's very good at structurally creating comedy, creating entertainment there. So really nice. Big smiles, agreeable, builds the story being delivered. So he's kind of just riffing around. What I love about this is twice he shows that closed eye, and I don't know whether you've named it yet, Chase. The closed eye when your neighbor has the solar panels, and what's that called?
I don't know. We call it maybe eyelid smug.
Eyelid smug. Okay.
Let's
so he does closed eyelid smug on a couple of times around. That he's the president, and so he has higher status. He's got more information than anybody else. Really, just that. It's just a piece of entertainment, I would say. Scott, what do you got?
All right, he goes down the comedy road since he's on Kimmel, and that's what's going on. So again, I agree with you guys. He's hitting that entertainment thing. He's becoming the entertainer there. This is the first time we hear any of them say, or we'll hear him say, that's what we're instructed to say. So it goes back to my theory is they've got certain things they can say, 3 or 4 bits, and that's it. And you see, we had such a long time to get to his baseline on this. We had 10 years, 12 years to look at him and go, okay, I understand what's going on there. So I think he's being serious. He's got that strong eye contact, and his voice tone goes to that strong, definitive Obama delivery where he's saying, when he's being honest about it and saying that's what we're instructed to say. I think he's being honest about that. So I agree with you guys. It's mostly entertainment, but he's given us a little piece of information right there that nobody else had. It's obvious they've been instructed not to say anything, but this is the first time somebody said it in that way, in a serious manner. So that's what I got.
I would immediately race to wherever they have the files about Area 51 and the UFOs, and I go through everything to find out what happened. Right. Did you do that?
That's why you will not be president. Because that's the first thing that you would do. The aliens won't let it happen. You reveal all their secrets. They exercise strict control over us.
Now, there are a lot of people that are going to examine your facial expressions here, every twitch, everything, and say, and of course, so did you look? Did you see? Did you explore?
I can't reveal anything.
Oh, really? Because President Clinton said he did go right in, and he did check, and there was nothing.
Well, that's what we're instructed to say.
All right, good?
Yep.
All right.
But frankly, there are a lot more sightings than have been made public. Some of those have been declassified. When we talk about sightings, we're talking about objects that have been seen by Navy or Air Force pilots or have been picked up by satellite imagery that, frankly, engage in actions that are difficult to explain, that movements that are hard to replicate, that we don't have the technology for, or traveling at speeds that exceed the sound barrier without a sonic boom. So, in short, things that we are observing that are difficult to explain. And so, there's actually quite a few of those, and I think that information is being gathered and will be put out in a way that the American people can see. We always, when we see these things, Maria, we always look for a plausible explanation. Weather can cause disturbances, visual disturbances. Sometimes we wonder whether or not our adversaries have technologies that are a little bit further down the road than we thought or that we realized. But there are instances where we don't have good explanations for some of the things that we've seen. And, when that information becomes declassified, I'll be able to talk a little bit more about that.
Well, I'll go first on this one. He's given the long version of everything we've heard so far. We should have played this one first because he goes through and covers everything that's been covered up to this point. The expressions he's making, the squinting, his head going back, his illustrating with his head, all those things coincide with what he's saying as far as being serious and just laying out the way it is. It shows it indicates he's being honest or being truthful about what he's saying. He's got a strong tone of voice and very matter of fact about what he's got. This is rehearsed because you can hear him going right down the line as he's, and again, it comes in those chunks that we talked about earlier. And he's not he's telling us, not telling us what we already don't know about what we already don't know and what we already know about what we already know. Basically, that's that little circle he's in right there. Again, fact-wise, no fluff, no nothing. Just here are the facts. Here's what we know, and here's what's going to happen. I know a little bit more than I can say, as they all do, and go on there. We don't know what it is, and there could be more out there. So no big illustrators, no stress. It's just fluid, and he's confident, and I think he's really good at this. A great communicator, great relayer of information as well. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, so I think what he leaks here is the elements that are plausible for him. So it is plausible that these things are weather. It's plausible that they are some kind of technology from an adversary, or it's plausible that they're just unexplainable. You don't know what on earth they are. They're neither of those two things. What we do see is but he says the information on those will become declassified. But ultimately, what he's suggesting there is the unexplained stuff will be declassified, and so you end up in the same situation of you have no idea what it is because we don't know we just don't know what it is. But here, we'll be transparent with you. You'll end up completely in the dark around this. There is disdain. I see disdain when he talks about for what can't be replicated. So it feels to me like if there is the chance that adversaries have tech that cannot be replicated, he doesn't like that. Now, that doesn't suggest that they do. He's just saying, he just seems to indicate to me, if that is a plausible thing, then he doesn't like the idea of that plausible thing. That plausible thing could exist, could not exist. I don't know which. It certainly is extraordinary if you do have something that on exceeding the sound barrier does not make a sonic boom. That defeats the laws of physics. So, if that phenomenon has been observed, that's pretty extraordinary. That defies the laws of physics that we would understand today. So I think this kind of puts right in my mind what the possible categories are, and that there's a category there that he particularly doesn't like. I don't know whether that category exists or doesn't exist, though. Chase, what do you got?
Yeah, I agree with you guys. Mostly honest, totally scripted. We hear one thing in here where we see a single shoulder shrug, and this is right when he's talking about when this is declassified. His shoulder goes up. And I think that might suggest that not everything's going to come out, which is probably for a good cause. It's not because they just want to keep secrets and the public are idiots. But I think on here we hear something I have personally never heard in my entire life from a government official, saying that a lot of this data came from satellite imagery of the Earth. I've never heard that before from a government official, saying that a satellite has captured some of these things, not just a pilot or something like that. So I just thought that was noteworthy. Who did I miss?
Me.
Greg, sorry.
So everything you guys said, agree 100%. The thing that's interesting about him is he has this quirky body language, and I've watched him a little bit to see. He also is the guy who was tasked with delivering this by June, and they assumed that they would still be in office. He ended up getting pitched, and he said, I really thought I would get this report released before I left. Well, he didn't. So that tells you there's a lot of scrubbing to do, a lot of methods and means and that kind of stuff. And I think that's part of the one shoulder shrug as well, Chase. But I think, Mark, you're dead on. We're not going to tell you anything of significance about how we prove that one isn't. The things we don't understand is where we'll say, look, guys, we tried and we can't figure this out. But his eyes are interesting because he does that weird left eye thing as he's speaking. And that left eye goes to close, narrows, every time he hits something that is hard to explain, something like defying laws of physics, something like every time he hits negative with any of them, his brow closes and his eye kind of gets tight. The only time that there's a difference is when he says adversary and his brow rises. There's something going on there. So either we're uncertain, and then maybe they have some voodoo kind of thing that we just don't get our hands around. Or maybe he thinks that something is going on bigger than that. Don't know. But there's something odd there. Now, this guy, again, he was a senator. I think he was a member of Congress and then appointed as some kind of a intel guy across part of Texas and then moved into this role. But this guy's been in charge of everybody in North America. So interesting, weird body language, but masterful. You didn't see any downright eye accessing. Doesn't feel any obligation to tell you anything he knows because he knows how important it is, to your point, Chase. We'll neither confirm nor deny as a standard line, just because anything that an intelligence person says, even in denying something, can confirm something else. Because intelligence gathering is about sometimes 360. Ask all the questions that you know the answers to and figure out what they answer differently. Sometimes we'll give you an answer. So lots of tricks in intelligence, and these guys are keenly aware. That's it. That's all I got.
Cool.
But frankly, there are a lot more sightings than have been made public. Some of those have been declassified. When we talk about sightings, we're talking about objects that have been seen by Navy or Air Force pilots or have been picked up by satellite imagery that, frankly, engage in actions that are difficult to explain, that movements that are hard to replicate, that we don't have the technology for, or traveling at speeds that exceed the sound barrier without a sonic boom. So, in short, things that we are observing that are difficult to explain. And so, there's actually quite a few of those, and I think that information is being gathered and will be put out in a way that the American people can see. We always, when we see these things, Maria, we always look for a plausible explanation. Weather can cause disturbances, visual disturbances. Sometimes we wonder whether or not our adversaries have technologies that are a little bit further down the road than we thought or that we realized. But there are instances where we don't have good explanations for some of the things that we've seen. And, when that information becomes declassified, I'll be able to talk a little bit more about that.
All right.
When you've seen this unidentifiable stuff, is your presumption that it is a China or a Russia testing some crazy technology that we somehow don't have, or are we sort of over assuming the abilities of China and Russia, and that the only other explanation is, if it is not us ourselves, that it's something otherworldly?
Well, Chuck, it's obviously been going on for a long time, and there's a lot of speculation. I've never seen any evidence that any of this is related to extraterrestrial human beings or beings of any kind. And for that reason, I've always thought that even though we have these sightings, and I guess the report that's coming out is going to basically acknowledge that there are a lot of sightings. They haven't tied it to being UFOs in the sense of relating it to enemies in space. Sure. But I believe a lot of this stuff probably could be countries like Russia, like China, like others who are, using now drones, using the kind of sophisticated weaponry that, could very well be involved in a lot of these sightings. So I think that's the area to go to, very frankly, in order to identify what's happening.
All right. Chase, what do you got?
So I think his blink rate's through the roof from the beginning. And this is something that changed before we started watching this video. So you could see the subject start to come up and his blink rate started going up to ludicrous speed, to use some space terminology. And when he's saying there's a report that's coming out, we see a galloping shoulders, kind of a single shrug on both shoulders, one at a time, which I would suggest is a doubt in the confidence of what he's saying, or lack of confidence. And when he's saying, I believe a lot of this stuff, there's a no head shake. This is one of those times we tell you that it doesn't always mean that. This is what it looks like. And I think when a person doesn't fully agree with what they're saying and they are saying no to what they're saying. And there is a whole lot of couching statements in true behavior panel fashion. I'm going to read them to you just real quick. We're going to say basically, believe, probably, could be, I believe, like, others, kind of, could very well, I think. So nothing is for certain whatsoever in the entire statement, not even his confidence in his own opinions. And this is not in his baseline. If you've seen him, he's a big, powerful government official. He was the Secretary of Defense when I joined the military, and he doesn't do this. I've seen him in person, and I've never seen any behavior like this. So he was a Secretary of Defense. He was CIA. He was Joint Chiefs of Staff. He went around all areas of D.C., and this is not in his baseline. Scott?
All right, why don't I go last? So, Greg, why don't you go next?
Sure. Now, I'm going to get my opportunity to be on Ancient Aliens or something. I guarantee you with what I'm about to say. So,
Unload it.
Guys, I'm going to give you quotes that you can use.
Hang on. Okay.
Yeah, I need to do that before I let go. So, again, Chase, this guy's pretty contained and pretty calm, typically. He's a big, powerful man in his life. I met him when I was stationed at Dick's. Together guy. What's interesting is when they bring up Russia and China, his blink rate is already fast, but then he gets his eyelids just fluttering like crazy. Then these three things together make me go, maybe there is something to this. When he says, I have never seen grief muscle. Boom, grief muscle comes up. Why is there grief muscle when he says, I've never seen this? Then he does a nervous laugh. Then he looks down to the right. And then he goes back and he does lip compression. I'm just going to stop right there and say, I don't know why all of that happened. I'm not UFO hunting and saying, hey, he knows where the UFOs are. This is out of character. And those things indicate deception. Then when he gets back to the adversary stuff, his grief muscle comes up again. Something's up in this whole messaging and out of character for a guy who has been in the intelligence business. Don't know what it is, but these are red flags. They make me want to dig in and start poking and prodding. And I think it's what you're seeing too, Chase. Same with all the things that you pointed out, all the believe and hedging and those kinds of things. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, so there is a lot of hedge in there, and you read it out there, Chase. But within that hedge, he lays it, he's the most secure that we've seen anybody at laying it at the feet of a couple of entities of going, it's China or Russia. Now, yeah, absolutely. Now go back and hear what Chase has said, and there's hedging around it. And at the same time, super clear as to there's no other target other than it's China or Russia. And he narrows his eyes before mentioning those two things and literally targets those. So that's kind of interesting because, like you, I go, why the hedging and how clear it is? Because it would be so easy to go, and it could be aliens from outer space, and it could be just stuff that we don't know anything about, and it could be hot air balloons and all kinds of stuff. He could really hedge if he wanted to, but he hedges around these two things. Now, he was somebody of importance. Is he somebody of importance anymore? Is he hedging because, he doesn't really know, but he would like to lay the blame there, but he doesn't really know whether the blame is there. I just have no idea about that. But this is the beautiful, tricky thing about communication and nonverbal and behavior, is what we're holding in our hands there is two very different things, both with quite a lot of weight to them. And so we've got a phenomenon there, and you kind of want to know, well, why? Why is that? Why is that? What is the context of this person that they would do this at this point? Scott, what do you got on it?
All right. Again, we're seeing the same behavior and approach as we've seen up to this point. Okay, y'all pretty much, I had 2 or 3 things done. Greg got a couple of them. Chase, you got one. Mark, you got one. So I think everything's pretty much covered.
When you've seen this unidentifiable stuff, is your presumption that it is a China or a Russia testing some crazy technology that we somehow don't have, or are we sort of over assuming the abilities of China and Russia, and that the only other explanation is, if it is not us ourselves, that it's something otherworldly?
Well, Chuck, it's obviously been going on for a long time, and there's a lot of speculation. I've never seen any evidence that any of this is related to extraterrestrial human beings or beings of any kind. And for that reason, I've always thought that even though we have these sightings, and I guess the report that's coming out is going to basically acknowledge that there are a lot of sightings. They haven't tied it to being UFOs in the sense of relating it to enemies in space.
Sure.
But I believe a lot of this stuff probably could be countries like Russia, like China, like others, who are, using now drones, using the kind of sophisticated weaponry that, could very well be involved in a lot of these sightings. So I think that's the area to go to, very frankly, in order to identify what's happening.
President Obama says that there is footage and records of objects in the skies, these unidentified aerial phenomenon, and he says we don't know exactly what they are. What do you think that it is?
I would ask him again. Thank you. Come on, boss, let's go.
All right, Greg, what do you got?
Yeah, not a lot. I'm just going to tell you what I call this guy. Everybody else we've heard, the strategy was chairman, flirt, entertainer. This is a survivor in chief. He knows how to survive. This guy's been around 150 years, as he jokingly says. And he knows that that kind of a question is a dumb one and can be taken any way they want, and he just turns it around and says, boom. Now, whether somebody told him to say that or not, don't know. And then he walks off and looks kind of goofy and says, oh, yeah, better put that back over here. That's all I see. Nothing from it. He's had a little work done, so his forehead's kind of up. There's no body language to that. It's just where he's at. Scott, what do you got?
I agree. There's not much there, and he's still got it together enough to know don't get close to that, especially since he hasn't got the thought out answer and doesn't have that play that most people that we've seen so far can get in there and goof around with it and then get out clean. So I think I think he did what he does best. He said, okay, it's not for me. Go ask him again. Great answer, though. That's a great answer for that question in that situation. Yeah. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, it's a good comedy act. And I think what happens is that, well, first of all, his status is lowered by the question because it starts off with, you know, a president. I don't know if he's not president at this point, I guess. He's vice president?
I think he is. I think he is. I think he's president.
He's president.
He's president. Oh, well, even more status lowering then, because basically the question starts with a whole different president. So, and I think that's where the laugh comes from is, oh, I've already been taken down. They're already talking about, you know, my old workmate. And so I think already he's a little bit riled by that. I think we see some adapting on the pen as he's thinking of the answer, and then it stops because he goes, I got a good one. I got a good one for this. He delivers his line, and then he's off with his double act. I don't know who's part of his double act, but it is like, you know, it's like some double act you'd see in Florida somewhere, you know, after I think they have dinner about 4:30, 5:30 there, and on he'd come with his double act, and that would be, you know, come on, let's go. Round of applause and out of here. Chase, what do you got?
Yeah, I agree with you guys completely. But I want you to watch his face again when the question starts coming up and he knows he needs to come up with the answer. His eyes widen like a scared kid. And the moment he hears the subject matter of the question, his hands tighten around that pen, like you were saying, Mark. You see that fidgeting start going with the pen. And then he dismisses the question. They asked him his opinion, and he said, you need to ask someone else. I thought that was interesting redirect. But I think that made him feel like he lost control. And his strong hand gesture when he's telling that person to come along is his way to regain the feeling of being in control. I'll leave it at that.
President Obama says that there is footage and records of objects in the skies, these unidentified aerial phenomenon, and he says we don't know exactly what they are. What do you think that it is?
I would ask him again. Thank you. Come on, boss, let's go.
All right. If you like what we're doing, please subscribe and hit the like button as well. Trying to get that algorithm up. So as soon as you subscribe, you become a panelist. You become one of us. So subscribe if you would, please. All right. Anybody else got anything else? We good?
We're good. No.
Good.
All right. Well, this is a good one, fellas. I'll see you next time.
Bye now.
The Behavior Panel. We can say that the recent sightings are in no way connected with any secret development by any department of the United States.
Bị xe nó mang cái sự nó không xịn xịn